Let's sit at the round table and discuss.
Oh, there you go. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Oh my God. So nice seeing you.
Too.
Wow. Even if it's not in person, at least through the cameras.
Yeah.
That works.
Yeah. It's a whole new world that we have with COVID.
Yeah. We also have AR, who is also my teammate in this project that I'm putting together, and I'm hoping to run for a long time. So I just want to start by saying thank you for agreeing to being here today to discuss such important topic, which is domestic violence and mental health in particular. So we can start, first of all, by introducing ourselves, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so my name is Machella and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a licensed social worker and I work in Broome County at a local domestic violence agency.
Okay, thank you. Well, I can go. My name is Lena Sinistera. I currently work in a hospital settings, educating patients with diabetes prevention, hypertension, and cardiovascular disease. And I'm happy to be here today. So Machella, we spoke about, well, when it comes to abuse, right? We often think of abuse as just physical. And we forget about the mental, the emotional, the financial part. So I would like to maybe see what your perspective is as far as the connection between domestic violence and mental health.
Yeah, so I think that domestic violence impacts our mental health significantly. I think if people aren't feeling safe, whether that's like emotionally safe or physically safe, it's going to be hard to be able to function, right? To feel like we can do the things that we typically do. And I think it can also lead to symptoms related to like anxiety, depression, and even panic too.
Agreed. And what do you think is like the best, or kind of the impact on who does it affect the most? Children, women, men, in your opinion?
So I think that there is like a general myth that domestic violence only impacts women. However, domestic violence, it impacts anyone regardless of gender. And it also impacts people regardless of age. So I've worked with clients who are, I mostly work with adults, but I've worked with the clients who are 18 all the way up to like, say in their 70s. There is no specific age range or gender that domestic violence impacts.
Right. Interesting to know that you work with a wide variety of ages. Yeah. Oh, we have AR now.
Hi, how you doing?
Having technical issues.
How are you?
I'm doing okay.
Welcome, AR.
Okay.
So we were discussing about the relationship between domestic violence and mental health in particular, and that domestic violence doesn't only affect women and children, but it also affects men and the elderly as well.
Okay.
So
yep, see
AR,
that quite often.
In your perspective, do you see men affected by domestic violence? And that seems to go underreported, right?
Yeah, I see it a lot during in a lot of, I can't speak outside of it, but in a lot of urban communities, domestic violence with women, because now a lot of the favors are in the women's court to some degree. So a lot of the abuse is on both ends, but a lot of the women still to this day get away with abuse. And abuse doesn't have to be physical, right? It can also be verbal, mental. So that happens as well, along with a lot of single mothers, right? Abusing their children. So, I do see it quite often.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Now, when it comes to, I know AR and I speak a lot about self-defense, right? So I want to hear from you, Michaela, as far as using physical force to protect yourself from someone else harming you.
So that is a really hard one. Where I work, we really encourage like nonviolence. But like I see that it's really important that people have knowledge of how to defend themselves and how to protect themselves.
I know that's a tough one, right?
Yeah.
Definitely. And as far as education, where do you think we should start with education? Should we start at school level, or where should we start?
I think that's a good question too. I would say, I think there should be education in like the workplace, and then I think it could kind of go into different fields, like when, and what I mean by that is if we're teaching our coworkers like how to be aware of these things and how to work with clients or patients in a safe and trauma-informed way. I think it's going to help them to communicate with folks more and to be able to determine if people are experiencing domestic violence. But I can also see how maybe talking about it like at a younger age, like maybe even in high schools, like talking more about interpersonal relationships and like the violence that can go on, and that could be helpful too. But even expanding that to like talking about what violence is beyond that scope of just the physical violence, but like the verbal, the emotional, and then other means of power and control, like financial.
Right. And you and I, yesterday we spoke about trauma-informed care, right? And the fact that there isn't enough trauma education in our communities. So what would you suggest, or what is your view on that?
I think being trauma informed is helpful for anyone in any profession, whether that be like in the medical field, as a teacher, in the mental health field. And what I mean by trauma informed is just like being aware of the different things that could be traumatic for someone. And just our language, and also being able to pay attention to other people's body language and tell when they're uncomfortable, and then know how to mirror a body language that feels safe, and see when, maybe we need to kind of change our language to be more inclusive and safe.
Right, I agree. Those are very good points. What about other recommendations in general, as far as mental health, particularly?
Do you mean like access to mental health?
Yes.
So I know in Broome County, I'm not sure if it's the same in other areas too. I think that there is a huge gap in access to mental health care. We have a couple counseling centers in the community, and we have a lot of private practice therapists, but I'm still hearing folks, like when I refer someone for long-term therapy, they're still experiencing long waits for therapy, or maybe they're having a hard time like finding a therapist that fits their needs, or maybe therapists who are more aware of what domestic violence is and how they can be a safe and supportive professional for them to work with. So I think it's just so important that we try to find a way to bridge some of those gaps in the community, so that folks aren't waiting long periods of time for mental health care. And I don't know if that's like kind of collaborating with other folks to try to get certain folks in sooner who are kind of more in crisis or have a higher level of need, or even if it's creating other groups that can help in the meantime, like maybe support groups or like other services where, you know, folks can talk about things in a therapeutic way, but maybe it's not the same as individual therapy.
Right, right. So very individualized that can help on a individual case to case, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense. I just lost my thought.
So what I want to say about that is that I think to actually make that happen, I believe it needs to be privately owned by I guess the community. A lot of these programs for mental health are government funded, right? And the government, if it's government funded, where's the money? You know, if you're looking at people that really need help, it's sad when a cop asks that's homeless, would you like to go into the shelter? They feel more safe out in it's just weird. They feel so more safe in the street, knowing that they have these mental issues, right? They feel more safe on the sidewalk outside in the freezing cold than going into a shelter. You know, I think that mentality. And it's not just, it's a lot of the homeless people, they're outside because of that reason, you know? And I think a lot of it has to be a lot of us individually need to do our individual parts, not depend on the government to put up some sort of program together. I guess like the conversation we're having right now, right, can help. So we're learning from each other, learning from you, from your experience. So we're able to go out there and do, even we do a little bit, right? It helps somewhat.
Yeah, I think you're right. And so not only like having conversations with each other, but also different agencies in the community coming together, having conversations, and then maybe even like if it's a nonprofit, finding gaps in the community and then like raising funds to help that. Because sometimes when you have fundraising and money from fundraising, there's less requirements versus like having funding for grants or some like governmental funding.
Absolutely.
Yeah, those are very good points. I agree 100%. And now in terms of the abusers, what is your view on helping the abuser? Because we sometimes got to start from the root, right, of the problem.
Yeah, so I think one thing that is really difficult is there's not a lot of resources for folks who are labeled the abuser. And with that being said too, I think everyone needs help, right? So like regardless of the situation, people need support. And if they're out there in the community asking for support, I think it's important that we have more resources available of people who can help, who have more knowledge about what things can help someone, because I think there is a lot of stigma. But then even like that layer too, sometimes in domestic violence relationships, there are like, I don't necessarily like the word, but sometimes like both parties are abusive in some way. And I think the word is like co-combatant, and it could be like a way to protect the person, or for the person to protect themselves in that moment. So then there's stigma associated with that. Like, how would you label a client coming in experiencing that? So having providers that aren't going to be biased and who are going to be aware of like those different layers, and then able to provide like care that's not stigmatizing and that like feels safe for them.
Yeah, we need more of that for sure. AR, what are you gonna say?
No, I pretty much, I never thought about, you know, helping the abuser. You know, that never came to my mind of the abuser. I really do think that, you know, as far as adults, you know, unfortunately, well, because adults have the choice, they can make their own decision if they want to get help or not. And if they're refusing help, you got to kind of back off and just find someone that actually is open. I think a lot of people are afraid to get help, right? If my abuser find out I'm over here telling this agency about them, I'm gonna go home that night and get hurt even worse than I did the previous night. I do believe that, the abuser and the person that's being abused, it started from somewhere. So it's really about the children, a lot of the children, especially with last year, they're being locked inside the house. Man, it's just, the mom is having, or the parent, the guardian's having issues, and they just like, you know what? They're getting tired of the kid is tired of being in the house, or the parent, the guardian is, if they was abusive before, now they're in front of 24/7 with this child, and it's worse. So I think, like you said, they gotta, don't be shameful to get help. It's not shameful. It doesn't mean you're something's wrong with you because you're going to get help. Something's wrong with you if you don't. No, that's my take.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, AR. And these are challenging topics that can take years, centuries to come up with a solution. So that's why I decided to bring the two of you together today to just kind of have a conversation about it. So thank you. So what can Machella do for the community, and as far as domestic violence and mental health, or both?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
So I think part of it would be like, are you asking like as a social worker, or as a community member, or
As a member of the community?
I would say that something that's really important is just being more active in things that go on in the community. So being a part of different organizations that focus more on the community's change. So like learning some of the behind the scenes in different agencies, learning how to be a part of like any local laws or local changes that go on, and then advocating for my clients, or anyone that I've kind of met and realized that there's a need for something in the community. It could be like through volunteer, or even being a part of like different boards, things like that.
That sounds great. Very doable. Yeah, very realistic. What can AR as a male do? What can you do, AR, to help?
I just believe, I guess having these type of conversations with other men that are the abuser, I guess, that's one way to start. I'm pretty sure everyone, like you can walk into a grocery store and you can notice something's wrong, or you can be doing a customer service job and you're asking a woman a question and the man is answering everything, So I just think that being aware of your surroundings and see things that just doesn't quite look right. And as a man, I can deal more with the actual abuser, on my end, and hopefully try to come some sort of as far as the things I'm witnessing, that doesn't look right. And I guess on my end, that's what I could possibly do, I've tried to do that, with certain customer service job. As a woman would, she's sitting down at the table, she'll walk away and I say, hey man, was that called for? What's going, and most of the time the person, the abuser is not always he's mentally ill. Some people are just evil, not every time someone does something wrong means that they have a mental issue. Some people are just mean people. I think a lot of people are just really frustrated with themselves, and I think it has something to do with their childhood. So I think on my end, the best that I could do is just try to have these type of conversations with the abuser, try to invite them on to the show. Why are you doing stuff why would you want to hurt someone else? Why does it give you any right? So That's my perspective on that.
Interesting. Yeah. So more education, awareness, having conversations in small
Yes.
groups. Those things can help. Yeah. So we're pretty much close to 8 o'clock. And Michaela, we don't want to keep you anymore any longer. But I really want to have you again in the future so that we can have other conversations related to either topic or any other public health related topic that you may want to come and discuss with us if you like.
Okay. Yeah.
We often have different members of guests that we invite just so that they can bring their own perspective on things.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I wish you the best. This is a very rewarding job, right, that you have. So I thank you for choosing to do this type of job.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It was nice to meet you, AR.
Okay, nice to meet you too.
AR, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye,
Bye.
Michaela.
Bye. Talk with you soon.